What's the crappiest way a friend has shown you they weren't really your friend? Story 1. After college, I got a job on a cruise ship. The work was hard, and the hours were terrible, but the crew felt like family, so it didn't seem so bad. I became friends with an older guy, about 10 years my senior, and we had a wonderful time working together, laughing, joking, and really connecting. I came to love him as my boyfriend. We worked together for a few years, and then he took a position managing a fancy hotel. Even though we no longer worked together, we still went out to restaurants, bars, and other outings. I was in a serious relationship with this older man who had a child and an ex-wife. His child would stay with us every weekend, and I even went to the ex-wife's house for dinner. Things seemed pretty great, at least, that's what I thought. When I worked nights, my boyfriend would sometimes go out with my best friend and his boyfriend. I appreciated this. My boyfriend was new to the city, and it was nice for him to have company. One night, after a late shift, we had a huge argument out of nowhere. It wasn't about anything specific, but he ended up staying at my best friend's place that night. Things quickly got worse. We eventually broke up, and he moved out, leaving me to cover the full rent and utilities. I was devastated and leaned on my friend for support. Eventually, I couldn't keep up with the payments and moved back in with my parents while I looked for a cheaper place. My friend broke up with his boyfriend and suggested we look for a place together. It seemed like the perfect solution. I loved living with him and we got along really well. We moved into a very expensive apartment overlooking a park. I had the smaller room, so my friend paid a larger share of the rent, but we split the utilities. I would give him my portion and he managed the full payment from his account. Eventually, my friend got a new boyfriend and moved him in. Around the same time, I started a new job as a receptionist at the fancy hotel where he worked. About a year later, he left that hotel for an even better position at a rival hotel. My birthday was coming up, and normally we would all go out for dinner and drinks. My friend said he couldn't join because he had dinner at his boyfriend's parents', and I told him I understood. He promised we'd have a small dinner at home the next day, which he would cook. I went out with my family and other friends that night and had a great time. The next day, I was sitting on the couch, dying of a hangover, when visitors started arriving. First his boyfriend's parents, then some aunts and uncles, and eventually other random relatives. It was very strange, and my friend admitted he didn't know what was going on. After a while, he said he needed to go out, but would be back later to cook dinner. I said that was fine and hoped everything was okay with his boyfriend. Later that evening, it was very late. I sent my friend a text saying I'd make myself something to eat and not to worry. If he was dealing with drama, we could reschedule. I never heard back. The next morning, I was getting ready for work, but the apartment was unusually quiet. Normally, my friend would be up making breakfast, ironing his shirt, or doing something around the apartment. I continued getting ready, and before I left, I knocked on his bedroom door to say goodbye. There was no answer. I knocked a little louder, thinking he might be sleeping. I squinted, opened the door slightly, and called out that he better get up or he would be late. Still, there was no answer. When I fully opened the door, the room was empty. The TV was gone, the wardrobe was bare, and the pictures were gone. It looked like the place had been completely cleared out. I was completely confused and went further into the apartment. I tried calling his cell, but there was no answer. After a few more attempts, the calls went straight to voicemail. He had turned off his phone. I ended up calling a mutual friend who worked at the hotel with him. She told me he had moved abroad with his boyfriend and that it had been planned for months. She thought I already knew. I sat on the empty bed, totally bewildered, unable to process what had happened. Over the next couple of days, I went about my routine, but it kept replaying in my mind. Had I done something wrong? Who does that kind of thing? When I got home, I checked the mailbox and found a letter from the rental agency demanding payment for the apartment. Apparently, he hadn't been paying any rent. The money I had given him had gone into his running away fund. There were also a couple of utility bills in the name of the mutual friend who worked with him. But for our apartment address, he had used her financial details and put the bills in her name. When I called her, she was just as shocked as I was. The rent due was such a large sum that I couldn't afford it on my own. The only saving grace was that my name wasn't on the lease, just his, so legally I could walk away. About a year later, my ex got back in touch, and we became friendly over the next few months. One evening, we had dinner and discussed the situation. I asked him if he knew what had become of our mutual friend. He had moved to the UK with his boyfriend. I also asked what had happened to our relationship and where things had gone wrong. It turned out that while I was working nights and he went over to our friend's place for dinner, he told him I had been cheating on him with multiple guys. I hadn't. I had lost my V-card to him. I thought it was incredibly petty. He could have at least confronted me about it instead of just believing the lies. The kicker was that my friend had orchestrated the whole thing so he could sleep with my boyfriend, which he did. He had manufactured the drama to break us up and get what he wanted. That really hurt. Looking back now, I honestly don't care. That was 20 years ago. A chaotic moment in my life that is thankfully behind me. I still remember it vividly, but hopefully I'm a bit wiser now. We'll see. Before we continue, do us a quick favor. Smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. So, I'm a man in my late 40s, and Miriam is a woman in her mid-20s. Despite the age gap, we quickly became very close friends here in Spain. To stop speculation before it starts, neither of us ever had the slightest romantic interest in each other. I considered her one of my closest friends here in Spain, or anywhere really, and by her own words, it was mutual. Miriam doesn't really speak Spanish, so of course I was happy to help a close friend get settled. I can't even count the hours and hours I spent helping her with those things. That's just what friends do for each other. Now, I've been told before that I'm too trusting. I'll still take that over being jaded any day, but it never ever occurred to me that Miriam, of all people, would willingly, knowingly, and calculatingly screw me over. Anyhow, we signed a lease together on a great apartment in the center of Valencia, Spain. A third roommate, Robbie, who was kind of just a waste of space, hadn't been paying rent, so I had no choice but to cover it for 3 months. It was either that or everyone got evicted. We eventually kicked him out, and I asked Miriam to pay half of the money I had fronted to cover Robbie's rent and bills. That seemed reasonable, right? She refused, saying she never agreed to that. Well, technically that's true, but doesn't this go without saying? You do realize, don't you, that if I hadn't been covering Robbie's rent, then all 3 of us, you and I included, would have been tossed out on our buns. We could also have said goodbye to our €1,900 security deposit, as well as the €950 realtor fee. But I let it go. I shouldn't have. Then, by really bad luck, our next roommate, let's call him Tom, couldn't pay his rent or bills either. Actually, I'm still close friends with Tom to this day. Unlike Robbie, he genuinely tried to avoid putting us in that situation. But I digress. One pre-COVID October afternoon, Tom told us that he had to move out. He simply didn't have the money to pay his share of the rent or bills that we, or maybe just I, had already covered. That sucked, but what could be done in the short term? The bills and rent came out of my bank account for various reasons. Though Miriam and I were both on the lease, everyone else paid their share of the bills that had been taken from my account. I asked Miriam when she thought she could send me the €500 for her half of the €1,000 that Tom had left us with, which had already been taken from my account. Miriam flatly stated that she was not going to pay me for Tom's share. Remember, she was on the lease too. Excuse me, what do you mean you're not going to cover half of the apartment's losses? I'm just not, she says. I can't even imagine how that could be a question, but she insists she's not responsible for Tom. Actually, wuss, you and I are both on the lease. You and I are both responsible for anything that happens here. Welcome to the real world. It sucks, I know. The money's already come out of my bank account, so I'll need those €500. Nope, not my problem, she says. She confirmed again that she planned to throw me under the bus for that €500. Good friend, right? I lost it. One of my best friends, someone I trusted and deeply cared about, was telling me plain as day that she intended to stab me in the back. I yelled at her for a solid 5 to 7 minutes. I felt betrayed, furious, and completely let down, almost to the point of tears. And Miriam, not one shred of concern for anyone but herself. None. At this point, I need to emphasize that I had never ever so much as raised my voice to Miriam before. Honestly, never. But I sure did this one time, and anyone else would have under the same circumstances. To clarify, even Miriam later told Tom that she knew I would never in a million years lay a finger on her physically, and she was right. You see, Miriam, when you screw over close friends, they become angry, hurt, and feel betrayed, even a little in disbelief. I am certain, though, that Miriam still considers herself the victim here, because I yelled at her once, and because I wouldn't later take a financial hit for her by letting her off the lease, as if I should pay for her after she knowingly and willfully tried to screw me over. Anyhow, the next day, Miriam was just gone. She vanished while everyone was at work, figuring she could leave me to pay for everything and handle the legal situation alone. She fled to an Airbnb. Hiding is how Miriam justifies that she's the victim here, because if she weren't the victim, why would she need to run and hide, right? This selfish, horrible sewer rat didn't realize that she couldn't simply decide to be off the lease. It had always been clear that Miriam was never the sharpest knife in the drawer, but she can't be that dumb, can she? Then again, this is the same person who had to leave Spain and return to Canada for a month because she didn't understand she needed a visa. She finally got it through her pea-sized brain that she needed me to let her off the lease, and I would have, but I quite reasonably didn't want to be the only one left responsible for the apartment. I was not going to lose €300 by re-signing another lease with some random person just so she who had just tried to scare me could walk away from a situation she alone created. I'm sure someone as malicious as Miriam still believes I was being malicious. Nope. Eventually, she did give me the €500 for her share of Tom's €1,000 in unpaid bills, but it was only so I would let her off the lease. Then she was upset that I wouldn't re-sign a new lease with some random person, someone I wasn't comfortable entering a legal contract with. Again, I was open to letting Miriam off the lease, but I wasn't going to pay to do it for her sake when she had zero concern for me. Miriam realized she had messed herself up. Of course, nothing was ever her fault. She was always the victim. That must mean it was all my fault, naturally. So she started telling everyone in our friend group that I was psychotic. After all, I had yelled at her that one time, remember? She repeated this endlessly to anyone who would listen. At some point, she and her clinically sociopathic friend must have sat down and listed every possible flaw of mine they could think of, no matter how false or absurd, because they then plastered it all over social media. A lot of it was just odd accusations. I'm not even sure how she came up with some of them. You know that feeling when someone thinks they're getting under your skin, but they're really not, and it's just annoying that they think it bothers you? That kind of stuff. Oh, and supposedly, I had harmed kids at my elementary school too. Things got real, and that's why this is far from over. Anyhow, her friend, the sociopath Brian, posted lies that I was a PDF file and a serial offender all over the internet. He even put them on my university's web pages where my PhD classmates and professors could see. This guy went as far as creating a web page full of really bad, flat-out false accusations about me. Accusations that could ruin someone forever. Then they started targeting my girlfriend on social media. You can mess with me, but you mess with my girlfriend, who had absolutely nothing to do with this. And now we've got real problems. Brian sent me messages threatening to hurt me, throw acid, and seriously harm me, among other things. I had never met such a coward in my life. As far as I'm concerned, Miriam is wholly responsible for this. She is the one who spread horrible, completely false rumors about me. Incidentally, Brian is about to get a hard dose of police justice in about a month, but that is another matter. A few months later, Miriam sent me an oh-so-cordial email asking if we could discuss returning her share of the lease deposit. I replied with screenshots of the web pages her sociopath friend had posted about me, all based on the lies she fed him, and told her to bugger off. I don't know why Miriam never understood that I would have lent her the cash to cover Tom. She never understood that it wasn't about the money, it was about her betraying me as a friend. She never understood that if she had simply apologized for treating me so horribly, I might have returned her security deposit. But when someone can't take any responsibility and is an eternal victim, anyone who doesn't let them get their way becomes the abuser. I could tell you to screw yourself, Miriam, but I won't. I'll wish you well instead. And damn, you have a long way to go before you grow up enough to understand why, if you ever do. Story 3. I can wrap my head around this. What I still can't comprehend are the pathological liars and their behavior. I know some people, especially one kid I'll call V, who I thought was really great when we first met at university. I had just started settling into college when I met V at a party. We had mutual friends who only had good things to say about him. He was fun to talk to, outgoing, and we shared many of the same interests. We often ended up at the same parties, and for a while, we became great wingmen for each other. He introduced me to some girls, and soon we all began hanging out regularly after classes as a group. We would meet at my house and use it as a spot to crash and party among the 6 of us. It was me, him, and 4 really fun and good-looking girls who enjoyed spending time with us. I had no complaints about the situation. We became a close group, always regrouping before and after pre-games and parties, crashing on couches and beds after the night's chaos. Even after classes, we would always meet up to study and smoke, though not always in that order, and just hang out late into the night. One of the girls, let's call her W, took a liking to me. One morning after a party, W woke up around 6 o'clock and saw V sleeping on the couch. She told him that she liked me and wanted to get into my bed to sleep next to me, but she didn't know what to do. He told her, "Dude, it's Letmer, just get in bed. He won't have an issue." I woke up to find my half-unclad friend beside me. Her legs were wrapped around me and her body was pressed against mine in a full-body snuggle. She took full advantage of the tent that had pitched itself. Later that night, while we were dancing together in a sweaty basement party, W pulled me close and confessed that she had liked me since we met. She said she wanted a relationship. At the time, I wasn't interested in her, but now, with her being so forward and confident, I found it extremely attractive. I told her I was absolutely down to give it a try. So V got the ball rolling for my first steady college relationship. Everything was going well. I was enjoying the honeymoon phase with my girl, and V and I bounced off each other with ideas and energy. People loved coming to our place or inviting us out because we always knew how to have a good time. V and I grew really close during those first 2 months. Around this time, VL told me about his bad living situation. His landlord/roommates had screwed him over, and his parents weren't in the picture to help. Being generous, I offered to let him stay on the couch at my house until he could get a job and start paying rent. I have to admit, this was a really great time in my life. We partied hard, had amazing experiences, and met some incredible people. But the living situation never changed. I even offered him a job at my workplace to help him get back on his feet. I had to negotiate with my boss to bring him on since we didn't actually need more staff. He landed the job easily, doing extremely well in both the interview and at work. It was sales, and you'll soon understand why he thrived in that environment. But then things started going wrong at work. Inventory went missing, customers were unhappy, and about 6 months later I realized something was off. Little doubts began stacking in my mind, and I noticed that the things he told me didn't line up with what I was seeing. I began to think this kid might have been struggling for a reason. He wasn't even trying to find a place of his own. I also started to suspect that he was the one causing problems for me at work, and even with my other friends. Still, I gave him the benefit of the doubt because he had always been good to me, like a brother. I didn't want to face the alternative, that he was completely using me and my generosity. People started telling me to Google him. I did, but at first I didn't see much. I probably wasn't looking hard enough. Soon it became clear I was dealing with a wolf in sheep's clothing. I checked the work cameras and saw him stealing thousands of dollars worth of merchandise from the safe. I saved the footage and locked it in the system. When I confronted him and demanded an explanation, he claimed he was just pulling items for a sale. I asked him to show me the receipt for this supposed $10,000 sale. This was a cell phone store, like a Sprint in a mall. The biggest sales were around $6,000, and that only happened once or twice when I sold a family plan with 5 brand new iPhones. He pulled up a receipt, but it was from another day and for the wrong merchandise. I told him to cut the crap. I know you stole it all, dude. I'm gonna do you a favor and pretend I haven't seen this yet. I don't know where the merchandise is, but put it back and tell me when you do. This can end now. Do not do this again. You've put me in a very bad position, made me look terrible for recommending you, and I am not going to let this slide. He replied, dude, I appreciate everything you do for me. Don't think otherwise. I really do. You are my brother, but I'm not lying to you. I didn't do that. If you want, I can take the blame for it though. Wow. Just wow. I consider myself a reasonable person, very logical in my thinking, but this was so far beyond me. I was flabbergasted. I told him I couldn't believe someone could look me straight in the eye and lie like that. I can't live with someone I can't trust, especially when they're putting my life at risk. We argued, and he kept insisting he had never done me wrong. He said we were brothers, that I was overthinking. I could smell the gas from across the room. Eventually, I did some deeper Googling with more specific keywords, and that's when I found an article. When he was 16, he went to a local young adults club, walked up to the key rack inside, and ripped it right off the wall behind the receptionist's desk. Then he went to the parking lot, started pressing unlock on the keys, and looted people's cars, credit cards, jewelry, whatever he could find. He sold the jewelry and used the cards online and at high-end stores and restaurants around town. What a complete idiot. He was charged with 26 counts of credit card fraud, theft, breaking and entering, and more that I can't even remember off the top of my head. I thought I was close with him at this point, or so I believed. Despite the obvious gaslighting, manipulation, and lying, I really wanted the truth, so I confronted him directly to try to catch him off guard and get a confession. He flat out denied it again, and his tone and expression of sincerity threw me for a loop. I showed him his 16-year-old mugshot, and he laughed like it was a joke. He said he thought it was hilarious that I believed it looked like him. Then I showed him his name under the picture and read the article aloud. It listed his hometown, the crimes, and his full name. He actually laughed as if it were a funny coincidence, not even nervous. Then he insisted he would never do something like that and called it a crazy coincidence. This was absurd to me. I knew it was clearly him, and it was obvious that he could tell a straight-up lie with a completely straight face. It got to the point where I think he even believed his own lies. I couldn't believe it, but I witnessed it firsthand. I began digging more and discovered many other compulsive lies he had told me. He has never admitted to any of them, even when there was hard evidence. To make a long story short, I realized that this person had intentionally entered a friendship with me to take advantage of my generosity and social life. Once I understood what was happening, I quickly let him exit my life. He still tried to get me to hang out, and I gave him a few chances. But once his act was up, all the lies became obvious, and I nipped the friendship in the bud. She was the same. She cheated on me the whole time, lied constantly, and even believed her own lies. We broke up shortly after I discovered this. I feel like it shows that these types of people tend to congregate. But then again, I still keep in touch with some of the other girls, and they are nothing like V or W. I'm a person of logic. I can't understand this behavior or its reasoning. Last I checked, Vian's back in prison, this time serving a longer sentence. W tragically overdosed at the beginning of this year somewhere in the South. Of course, this is terrible, and I feel for her family. but I think it shows that lies inevitably catch up with you. Believing your own lies, whether to others, like in my story, or to yourself, like W, who always had substance issues she never admitted to, is a one-way ticket to trouble. I live my life honestly. Sometimes the truth sucks, but you know what's worse? Living a lie. Living a lie. Keeping a lie going. And most importantly, lying to the people who genuinely care about you. I would say that lying is the fastest way to make someone want absolutely nothing to do with you. Story 4. It's not quite the same, but I had an ex. Well, I call her my ex. I'm genuinely not sure what kind of relationship we were ever in. We did everything a couple would do. Lived together, worked together, traveled together, hung out all the time, had an intimate relationship, yet she saw other guys. Meanwhile, I wasn't allowed to see other girls because that would have been cheating and disgusting. One guy at the backpackers caught her eye, and I knew it. He was a friend of mine, and one day he said, "I think we need to talk." I've racked my brain trying to remember what prompted it. I'm not sure if he admitted they had kissed or if it was just that he liked her and the offer was there from her. I can't remember, but he said, as a friend, he would never sleep with a friend's girlfriend. It created a bit of confusion because she regularly told other people that I wasn't her boyfriend. So I was left looking like a hopeful wannabe, all while friendships were at risk. He said he had done it before and was disgusted with himself for betraying a friend, but he wanted to reassure me that he would never do such a thing to another friend, no matter how long we'd known each other. These isolated backpackers were sometimes the only places to meet people, so friendships formed very quickly. The man looked me in the eyes, shook my hand, and hugged me. I believed him. I could trust this guy. So that was that. One night, we all 99% internationals went to the pub for a big blow-off. My girlfriend, another mate, and I were leaving the next day, and a few other people from the hostel we didn't really hang out with were also going, so pretty much everyone from the hostel was there. It was a small rural town, and the locals kinda intimidated most of them. Mostly Koreans, so we rarely went out, but when we did, we went in big numbers. Anyway, my girlfriend suddenly came up to me, furious that someone had grabbed her buns. I hesitated for a moment. She'd snuck off with guys in clubs before, so I was a little surprised that she didn't like this dude touching her. Still, I barely bigger than a 13-year-old had to confront this drunk guy who basically didn't even look at me but was smiling, almost drooling as he tried to push past me. These were all farmer guys, so they were all ridiculously strong. Though he wasn't much bigger than me, this dude was far too strong for me to hold back. I asked my handshake friend for backup as the guy went from barely noticing me to pushing me directly. My friend helped by grabbing my girlfriend and dancing with her. I thought it was a smart move. Maybe it'd convince him she was with someone else and he'd back off. But no, he wasn't having it. He was getting a little too close with her. It wasn't even hidden. You could practically see the veins through the denim. She was all aflutter. Meanwhile, I had to deal with the embarrassment of my friend dancing with the girl I was defending while I was yelling at the dude that she was my girlfriend. This guy was getting aggressive as hell. He even had the audacity to tell me she wasn't my girlfriend. Luckily, there were two Aussie brothers staying at the hostel who were, to put it mildly, slightly insane. They were loyal to our group. They jumped in and went after the dude. A big fight broke out between them and a few other guys there. I wasn't about to abandon my friends, so I had to have their backs. I tried to do something to stop the fight, but I got knocked through the DJ table and ended up badly bruised. In the melee, my girlfriend and the French guy went back to the hostel and hooked up. Apparently, all that aggression flying around scared her, so she fled, which is what she told me later. While the fight was going on and I was bruised and cut from the smashed glass, I had no idea she had left. I had to go to the doctor to treat the cuts, even though they were fairly minor. I had to wait until morning because the surgery was closed for the night, and the one doctor in town was asleep while it was all happening. By the time he saw me, it was technically Saturday morning, and the surgery was still officially closed. He wasn't supposed to be in until Monday. That ended up costing me extra. I got back to the hostel early afternoon the next day, and no one actually knew where I'd been. The pub owners had taken me and dropped me off, without bothering to tell anyone. When I returned, I was tired and just wanted to hug my girlfriend to make sure she was okay. She was fine, I found out later. I'd been worried that she'd be worried. She said she thought I had been in my room all night. The room was shared by a dozen other people, 99% of whom were part of our hostel social circle. At this point, we were staying in separate rooms because we had moved away briefly, and when we returned, the couple's room was taken, as were the mixed rooms. I just wanted to lie down with her and sleep, but she was keen to go out into the garden to sit in the sun and have breakfast with our friends, so I went with her. We sat at the table wherever we could find a spot, though I wished people had scooted over so we could sit together. I ended up sitting across from my girlfriend, who was sitting next to Handshake, that's what I'm calling him here. Everyone else was asking about me, where I'd been, how I was doing, etc. Even the two brothers involved in the fight, who had been taken away by the police, were back before me. Though they shared the room with me and I hadn't been in all night, They never asked where I had been either. They just assumed I'd be lying with my girlfriend. Everyone asked where I was or how I'd been, except my girlfriend and Handshake. I was getting a weird vibe from her. She didn't seem concerned at all, and Handshake gave me an even weirder vibe. I kept catching him looking at me shiftily as he smoked. I even asked him if something was wrong or if it was just my paranoia from lack of proper sleep. I shouldn't have given him that option. He said it was just my imagination, that everything was fine. I laughed it off and turned to talk to someone else. As I scanned the group, I noticed the only ones staying quiet were my girlfriend and Handshake. She was standing, sorting some food, and I could tell from her body language what she was doing. Her head was down, long hair hiding her face, quietly signaling something to him. Something like, "Don't say anything." I never heard the words, but I could tell. My smile faded. I quickly looked from him to her again. He, shiftily trying to keep an eye on me, held a hand to his mouth for a smoke and whispered something I read as, "I think he knows." Her body language changed too, and my face went from a smile to anger to nearly crying. As I looked around, unsure how to react, I caught a few others avoiding my gaze, and I realized they must have known too. I was so embarrassed, angry, and upset. I launched across the table at my friend and swung at him, but the Aussie brothers grabbed me, shouting, "Whoa, what's going on?" I was being held back and carried, and felt even more humiliated. It looked like two adults holding a child in a tantrum. I struggled free and told them to get the hell off me, shouting all kinds of things at him about what a friggin' snake he was. My girlfriend told me it was none of my business, and suddenly the whole place seemed against me. Everyone acted like I'd ruined breakfast for no reason. I was furious. Not only had Handshake failed to have my back the night before, but he had also embarrassed me during what could have been, and eventually was, a much more heated situation. He had straight up lied to me under the guise of friendship. When it became clear what had happened, the two Aussie lads were firmly on my side and threatening to kick the crap out of Handshake. But because it upset my girlfriend, who ran off crying, I told them to leave it. I probably should have waited for her to go inside and then let them deal with him, but he was my friend and I didn't want any real harm to come to him, even after I'd swung a punch at the guy myself. Weirdly, out of all those friends in that group, no matter how close we were, Handshake is one of the few who has kept in touch, albeit not very regularly. It's been nearly 15 years since all this happened. While the invites have slowed down, he's always said I should visit him if I ever go to his country. In the earlier days, I probably would have gone. Despite everything, he was still a friend to me, and we shared some strong ties, I think. But regardless of how much of a friend he is or was, my first thought if I ever saw him again would be to punch him in the mouth as hard as I could. My right hand, the same one he shook all those years ago. Story 5. Most recently, I went on an exchange program. Some of my roommates and I became close, 8 people sharing one apartment. One guy in the group, Randall, developed feelings for another girl, Anna. That would have been fine, but he started pressuring her and acting sad around her, as if trying to manipulate her into giving him a chance. His brother had ended his life, which is tragic, but he constantly brought it up around Anna. He made the group environment really uncomfortable. Anna was clearly uneasy and not interested. At some point, Randall started talking to me a lot. I was trying to be a good friend, so I let him open up and tried to help him, but he kept circling the same thoughts, like, "No, she's giving me signs." Anna and I were closer than Randall and we were even planning a trip together in the summer with another friend, Rita. Then Randall told Anna and Rita that I had invited him to come on the trip. He casually mentioned to me that he was looking up cool places to visit in our destination, my home country, when we go in the summer. I was shocked. It was probably obvious, but I'm usually not very confrontational, so I just smiled, nodded, and asked questions. He started saying that he had talked to Anna and Rita and that we were all really excited to go, so we began planning the trip together. The girls thought I had invited him, and I thought they had invited him. It was awkward, but no one was addressing it. Meanwhile, Randall continued to stalk Anna in a really creepy way, trying to convince her to like him. By the end of Easter break, things had exploded. We all already had plane tickets. Randall had somehow convinced Anna to go out with him, but she realized she wasn't feeling it. He ended up blaming me for the advice I had given him. I had only thought Anna might be interested when she accepted the date. I never told him she was. I remember telling him to take it easy. From that moment on, things fell apart between Anna and Randall. He first blamed Rita, who he never really bonded with, and then he blamed me. Anna felt guilty, but both Rita and I were certain it was all Randall's fault. By this time, we had another close friend, Adrian, who was incredibly helpful in dealing with all of this. He often took us to his place, and he's a psychologist. This isn't central to the story, but he deserves a mention because he was truly the best. One night, around the time Randall had already started blaming me, I woke up to screams and a loud crashing noise. I later learned that he had thrown a mug and a chair against the wall in a tantrum. I didn't go to check, but I could tell something had happened in Randall's bedroom, which was on the opposite side of the house. He was with one of the guys who also lived with us, probably trying to calm him down. I didn't understand Dutch, and they were speaking in Dutch. The next day, I saw the guy come back in. I wanted to talk to him because I had exams and really needed my sleep. Quality sleep is crucial for me. He screamed at me, saying I didn't understand. He called me a narcissist, just like my mother, and said I hurt him. He claimed it wasn't about Anna, Rita, or me, but about his deceased brother. I tried to explain that I didn't care what it was about. I told him it wasn't acceptable to be woken up at 3 in the morning when I needed to be capable. I tried to say that I understood things can be hard, but he needed to keep it down in the middle of the night. I ended up hurting and crying because he threatened to hurt me. He was almost 2 meters tall, and I'm a small girl. I was scared and couldn't fall asleep. Rita and my boyfriend stayed up and talked to me for hours. Afterward, it became a big deal for Randall to get his plane ticket switched. He still tried to talk to me, knocking on my door and asking me to have coffee for old time's sake. I was honestly terrified, so I refused. He grew increasingly angry and would send me furious texts frequently. I still have them if anyone wants to see. Halfway through the summer, after the trip with Anna and Rita, I got a huge text from him. He used every weakness he knew I had, bringing up my fear of becoming a narcissist like my mother, and accused me of being all the things I had feared and more. I never regretted trying to help him so much and trusting him to reciprocate. Sometimes I still wonder if I was in the wrong. I could probably have tried talking to him a few days later, but I was really stressed with exams. Thankfully, I wasn't alone. Another story like this happened in high school. A friend of mine had a terrible boyfriend. He would cheat and ignore her. A typical douche. She was into him, and I can't really criticize her. I've fallen for douches myself. One time, her phone ran out of battery, so she asked to borrow mine to call him. I lent it to her, but he didn't answer. Later that day, he called back. I didn't recognize the number, so I answered and explained what had happened. He laughed and asked, "Who?" referring to my friend, even though I wasn't with her anymore. The next day, I told my friend what happened after hanging up on him. She was sad, but eventually got over it. A year later, she just stopped talking to me. Whenever she passed by, she would make a really weird face. I tried to talk to her, but she literally walked away. Later, I found out from him that her boyfriend had told her I was lying out of jealousy. He had lied to my face. It was ridiculous, of course, but she chose to believe her cheating, lying boyfriend instead of the friend she had confided in. She never even tried to confront me. In an instant, I went from being a trusted friend to an enemy. I just felt that was really unfair. Anyway, I've definitely learned one lesson from these two experiences. I will not get involved. They were both terrible people, but if I could do it over, I would have stayed out of it entirely. Story 6. About 2 years ago, some friends and I went to our local makeup store to hang out and buy makeup. One of our friends, S, earns good money from her job and likes to spend it on her friends. While we were in the store, another friend, L, dragged S around, having the employee test different products on her. L kept tossing all her items into S's bag without blinking, then let S pay for it, all totaling over $300. This is where L became unreasonable. We rode home together, and I was dropped off first. Later, I found out from another friend, J, that once it was just L and S in the car, L began giving S the silent treatment. S was confused because she hadn't said or done anything to warrant that reaction. Then L told S that she felt uncomfortable with S spending so much money on her. On its own, that would have been fine. The problem was how L handled it. It would have been best if L hadn't started putting all that stuff in S's bag and having her pay for it in the first place. If she felt uncomfortable afterward, the proper thing to do would have been to return the makeup to S. Then S could have returned it for store credit or money, since it was brand new and unopened. Instead, L broke and trashed all $300 worth of makeup and left it on S's doorstep. Now, rather than the makeup being used or returned, S's money was basically thrown down the drain. Then L blocked her. After this, S was understandably upset. The next day, Jay and I were hanging out and spoke to S on the phone. Hearing the story, we could see why she was upset. L could get very angry and irrational at times, so it sounded like her, but that didn't make her actions okay. We told S that we were sorry and that we were there for her. I believe we may also have texted L, asking why she had done that, and suggesting she apologize and hash things out with S so they could resolve the issue and move on. I don't remember exactly, it was a long time ago, but at the time it didn't seem like a huge deal. We figured that if they sat down and talked things through, they could sort out the misunderstandings and learn from the mistakes made in the incident. This is where I realized L was not my friend. I understand that we're all human. We make mistakes and sometimes do bad things, but we should own up to them, try to make things right, and learn and grow from the experience. Instead, L decided to post a picture of herself on her private story with at least 20 pills. Seeing this, I immediately freaked out. For context, a friend of ours had ended themselves about 2 years prior, which hurt all of us deeply and left a lot of trauma around situations like this. Elle and I then had a sit-down talk for an hour or two about how awful that was and how horrible it is to pretend to do something so serious and use it against people. Seeing Elle's post freaked me out badly because I took it seriously and was scared. I thought about calling the police or the local mental health center, but I was scared because I knew she had illegal drugs and alcohol in her room. If she were caught with those, she could get into a lot of trouble and lose her chances at college and traveling, which would only make things worse for her. Of course, she should be alive, but I was young and panicking. After having a panic attack trying to figure out what to do, I realized I was still very young and that this was a situation far beyond my experience. I went downstairs sobbing, still panicking, and told my parents what had happened and that I didn't know what to do. My mom said she could try calling Elle and talk to her first. Elle picked up and my mom spoke with her. We found out that Elle had never actually taken any of the pills. They were her prescription medication, but she hadn't taken that much at once and had just posed for the picture. In reality, Elle took the picture and then went to hang out with her boyfriend. I then talked to Elle on the phone. She told me that I had done the right thing, that she was fine, and that everything was okay. Elle also got mad at me for mentioning her drugs to my mom and for being upset with her about the other situation. She had perfectly managed to turn herself into the victim. At that moment, I was still in shock and went along with her. The next day, once I came to my senses, I was livid. What Elle did was not okay whatsoever. This incident opened my eyes to how manipulative Elle had been all these years. We had been friends, but it became clear that our friendship was not healthy. Elle always believed she was innocent while everyone else was against her. You can't reason with someone like that. I chose to move on with my life, focusing on my hobbies and meeting more friends who supported me and made me feel good. It took Lel at least a week to apologize to me and our other friends who she had scared. She only apologized after homecoming, when we arrived with a large group of friends who were enjoying themselves together. Elle stood in the corner with her boyfriend and the friend she always threatened to spend time with if we didn't join her, still getting everything she wanted. Later, she sent identical text apologies to Jay, our other friend, and me. Soon after, Elle decided to transfer schools, having lost her friends here, something she had been threatening to do for a while. It was an unpleasant experience that added to the issues I was already dealing with, but now I'm doing much better. I've made many friends who don't bring me down, people who are fun to be around and genuinely supportive. Elle apparently made new friends for a while at her new school, but eventually lost them and started reaching out to former friends and even people who had already graduated. I had hoped she might have learned from her mistakes with us, but she isn't that kind of person. I don't hate her, though I still wish her the best. I've run into her a few times since then, and we've managed to be friendly despite the past. It all sucked, but it taught me an important lesson about how friends should treat you and how you need to take responsibility for your own actions. Story 7. I had a best friend in high school, and we were inseparable. I had been struggling with severe depression since I was 12. I always hid it out of embarrassment and focused on making sure others were okay, instead of taking care of myself. She had anxiety, and I spent hours on the phone with her whenever I could tell she was not doing well. I remember one month my phone bill was over $200 because I had used so many minutes for her. In our senior year, my depression finally bubbled over, and I couldn't handle it anymore. I was barely eating and sleeping all the time. I couldn't even bring myself to make small talk unless people came to me. And when I did, I pretended to be fine out of embarrassment. That year, she met another girl and became fast friends, never bothering to check whether I was okay. One day, I decided to tell her what was happening and reach out for help. I apologized for how little I had been socializing in person and explained that I really was not doing well. I still remember her response, word for word, years later because it was so painful. We were walking before first period, and after I finished, she said, "I get that you're going through your problems, but I don't see why I have to suffer." I could barely keep myself from bursting into tears right there. Her new friend was vindictive and unpopular at our school. She set up and played pranks on me to fuel gossip. For example, I had a project where this best friend of mine and I were assigned to work together, and I had to Skype her for part of it. When I logged in, I saw her bio had been changed to read, "Evan is my bestest friend ever." Something silly, clearly meant to annoy me. When she joined the call, she appeared to be alone in her bedroom. I asked, "Did she write that?" My friend looked embarrassed, and before she could answer, the girl suddenly popped up from the bottom of the screen. She had been lying just out of view, waiting for me to say something. That year was brutal. I spent countless lunches in the girls' gym locker room. My school was 100 years old, grimy and covered in spiders. I would hide in a filthy stall, crying and forcing down bits of my lunch because I had nowhere else to go and didn't want to be seen alone. Also that year, my boyfriend cheated on me because I wasn't comfortable with intimacy yet, and I felt unbearably lonely without a friend's shoulder to cry on. He did it right before prom and took the girl he cheated with, so I didn't go. I had to work that night at the same banquet hall that was catering my school's prom. It was humiliating. Thank goodness I didn't serve their table, but many of them still saw me. Walking back to the kitchen, I overheard teachers whispering that they felt sorry for me. I appreciated their sympathy, but I was so embarrassed I went to the staff bathroom to cry. I cried a lot then, probably far too much. When I started university, she ended up in the same business program as me. I still remember a very literal crossroads right in front of me. I arrived in class and the hallway was crowded because the professor hadn't shown up yet. On the left stood my ex-best friend with another girl from high school. On the right was a girl I knew from work and a stranger I didn't recognize. I walked to the right, and that stranger became my best friend, and she still is, all these years later. And if you're wondering whether my ex-best friend and her vindictive friend stayed close after high school, no, they didn't. Ironically, I switched programs and my ex-best friend followed about a year and a half later. She tried to reach out on many occasions, but her attempts never felt genuine. It seems she only contacted me because I'd made friends in my new program, and she didn't know anyone. I never responded to her messages. She even told the sister of an old friend that I'd become a little bish, which of course got back to me. I have never, and probably never will, contact her to confront her about everything. At this point, it doesn't feel worth it. During those university years, a girl from our class, someone I knew as an acquaintance in high school, tried to end herself. I felt awful, wishing I had known she was struggling. I would have done my best to get closer and help her if I had known. That said, she did have a best friend who never left her side throughout high school and university, so I'm not sure I could have made a difference. Her best friend's constant support still wasn't enough to keep her from the edge. It was strange seeing my ex-best friend at the funeral. We acted like we didn't know each other, and after leaving the funeral home, it hit me. If I had succeeded in my plan that senior year of high school, it would have been me in that casket. She would have probably come to my funeral with her new friend, crying like she did at this other girl's, but I can't help wondering if she would have truly cared. Of course, my depression hasn't gone away. It's chronic. But for the past 6 years, I've had a wonderful best friend by my side and an incredible boyfriend who has stuck with me for 4 years. They have supported me through some of the roughest times, even while I sought treatment. They helped me when I couldn't drive and cared for me as I went through withdrawals again and again, switching from one medication to another to find something that worked. Of course, I am always there for them as well. I no longer have one-sided relationships, and I've been in a much better place since. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.